From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, surviving life. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw, and I'm delighted to be here on many levels. Very lucky to be here on many levels.
Fortunate indeed. Jennifer Land is not with us today. While not directly affected by the fires, the smoke in her neck of the woods was just too much to take in a health sense, so her and her family are safely out of town, but that means she's not going to be here with us today or on the ranked episode this week. We're hoping at this time of recording for her to join us for the Skeleton Crew finale, but Jennifer sends her regards. We're here to talk about Star Wars news. We have some casting news. We have some insights from Big Jim Mangold. Oh, we love talking about Jim Mangold here. Before we get to that, remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We're recommending, I chose this one again, Joseph, because I finally got to speak to her in Star Wars Outlaws. Crimson Climb by E.K. Johnston, the Kira book that I'm ready to dive into myself. Download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audio book.
Was she nice to you? Was Kira nice to you?
So I have chosen to be in good standing with Crimson Dawn.
That's what I do.
Yeah, there's another, there's the Ashiga clan based on Kijimi, and I'm good with them, though I've upset them. The Pikes hate me.
That's fine.
I just landed on Tatooine. Yeah, the Hutt Cartel is on my radar screen now, or I'm on theirs. That's actually one of the fun part of the games, because it does test your morality compass in Star Wars, even though you're an outlaw. And I am trying to be loyal to Crimson Dawn, but sometimes you just get a deal. You just get a money deal, and you're like, I don't know, maybe I'll still want to think with them. Maybe Lady Kira will be okay with it.
Nice.
It's been fun. That's our Audible A. We do have some updates on the Ask side.
That is right. We have been building our Patreon. We had a goal a while back to get to 415 paid patrons. Thank you very much for getting to that. We've got a live stream, a private live stream for patrons. They're going to be setting up for later in this month. Can I talk to date? Now we got to firm it up. Right now it's an idea of a date, but we'll make it real. We've also been having a goal to get to 420. We got over that as well. So we'll be setting up a new goal very soon. We have all been scrambling, I think, when I was gone working on the film, the holidays, then the start of the year. These fires have been rough. And my wife and I were talking about this, Ken. I'm sorry. I'm going off on a tangent. This is no longer an update or an ask.
I love
it's
it.
A tangent.
It's a life update.
I think there is a unique cruelty in our society where sometimes maybe the holidays are a little bit of a break, but for a lot of people, they're still quite busy. And then we have a holiday New Year's that is all about, hey, a reset. How do I want to live my life? What's the most important? And then the second January starts, it's like, and do your taxes, and fill out this form, and do it. Like, we set up this time where we should reset and go, what's most important? What's I'm going to make time for at a time where we have the least amount of time and have to do like a ton of the just get this business of being alive stuff done.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. Anyway. Yeah. That's my excuse for why we aren't more organized on our asks and our updates.
Oh, I hear some ringing in the back. I want to make sure you're safe.
I think it's just a test because it's been going off.
You know, I understand the need for tests. There's also a timing of the test that is something to consider these days.
I got my my app open here, the Watch Duty app, not the Duty Watch app, which is what I said last time, which is a different app. Anyway.
Different app. Yeah, I think that's become the staple of LA-based live streaming, is everyone has their Watch Duty app up and going. Sadly, tragically. Yep. Again, we laugh because it's the only way to sometimes process it there. So like Joseph said, we'll keep you updated on the things coming soon. And we appreciate all of you for, number one, supporting us, especially on Patreon and getting in that Discord. Coming out to see shows as we slide into a little bit of life adventures. I'm choking. Wow, I'm choking on food. Not crying, not emotional yet. There was we had a comedy show Friday night, and it was, not to go too into the behind the scenes, wasn't sure if it was going to happen, then wasn't sure if it should happen, and then kind of I myself was in a position where I kind of had to do it. Some stuff with the club, not a bad thing. Just was like, all right. And then you and Karen Haber and Alyssa Phillips agreed to still be on the show, and it was not an easy decision for all of us. You just don't know if it's right to do this during this time when just a few miles away the Eaton fire is still raging, and life does start to go back to normal, and we do kind of have to move forward, all those kind of cliche things. But we did the show. It was great. Our buddy Brady, 8984M, Johnny Starlight, coming out to see the show, bussing out of here, traveling from Orange County. Johnny Starlight came an hour into LA to see our comedy show, and they're ForceCenter friends, and we really appreciate that. And it was Joseph, you killed, and we had a lot of fun. But like, have members in the audience, sold out show, members in the audience just saying, well, thank you, we needed this. I would say we're not heroes. There's other heroes out there. We're just comics doing a job. But it was a lot of fun, and shout out to those that came out, and thanks again for doing the show under weird circumstances to start our weekend.
It was weird circumstances, and I did feel a little conflicted because, I mean, at the end of the day, for me, I think comedy and performance it's this beautiful relationship of, if everything goes well, the audience gets stuff out of it, and that's wonderful. But also the performer gets stuff out of it. And I think for me, there's always that, like, I do believe it's wonderful to make people laugh at a time of crisis. But then also one wants to check on one's ego of like, am I using that beautiful truth as an excuse to get me some sweet, sweet laughs that I need? So that was it, the thing for me. And, the club decided to go ahead. I didn't want to leave you, holding the bag. And I wrote some new stuff that went really well. The audience was really there and present. And it was so nice to feel like the audience was like, no, we want to laugh. We want to be here, which then made me really, really enjoy the show. Posted about this on social media, and everybody's been very, very nice about it, and very much in the on the side of laughter is important, and that's not just a hackneyed thing that people say. It's true.
Yeah, no, true. It's good. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, you want to check. You want to be like, hey, everybody, I'm gonna make you laugh and feel like no. Yeah. It was tense, and in the middle of it, middle of the show, there was a change in the Palisades fire that that was bad, to be clear, but seemed potentially horrific at the time. It created this tension as we're in the green room looking at apps, going, should we stop this? And then there was some context provided by the local news on the size depth. It did go more towards the 405, which was a problem. So I want to make sure I'm not discounting that for those that were experiencing that there. But yeah, it just kind of speaks to what's been going on the last few days. A lot of people been asking. I got a little bit of survivor's guilt in the sense of I'm in a place in Burbank where everything's around me. There's tension. There's bags ready. There's all that, but probably have been safe, will be safe type of thing. You don't know that. There's big winds tomorrow at the time we're recording Monday. There's bigger winds coming again. So I say that cautiously, but it just, everyone's been affected. And then you, sir, directly affected in a city block away kind of fashion. So wherever you want to go with your life adventures, take us.
Yeah, no, same thing though. I know people who have lost their entire home. I know people who have lost their entire neighborhood. There are many things about it that are extremely difficult. There was a fire near us that I could see the flames. I never knew I was looking at Runyon Canyon. I never knew that was the hill just over. That was just peeking up over the next apartment building as I look out my window. I'm sure anybody who follows me on social media has seen our little balcony where I post my cocktail photos. Yeah, that was on fire. Bright orange flame. That hill is, a couple miles from us, but then we were almost in the evacuation zone, but not quite. So I feel extremely lucky, and also just on high alert because it could happen again. But extremely, extremely lucky.
Yeah, we all are. I sending out the thoughts of those affected. What do those words even mean anymore? But it's been wonderful to see, Joseph. We speak often here the importance of one of the big, important aspects of Star Wars is community, connection, empathy. Anakin saying, "Mom, you say the biggest problem in the galaxy is no one helps each other." I hate that it takes these kind of situations to remind us of that, but everywhere you turn, there's almost too many volunteers. There's almost too many donations. There's almost giant crowds where they're saying you can no longer come to the Rose Bowl. We need that for fire operations, command center stuff. Go somewhere, and then TikTokers, live streamers, organically going. All right, we started this. We're going to move it over to Santa Anita. We're going to and just seeing everywhere. Truly, people coming together. I hate that it takes these situations to make that happen. I wish that could go on beyond the walls of tragedies, but it's definitely been part of the recovery, emotional recovery, I think, in our region.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And lots of discussion of what the larger Los Angeles metro area means to people and celebrating what the city really is, as opposed to some of the stereotypes about the city. That has also been a really good sort of coming together of community.
It has. It has. Well, there you go. Should we talk about some Star Wars?
Yeah.
We are going to talk about some Star Wars news, and I'm excited by this one. This began. Here's the headline: Baylan Skoll recast going into Ahsoka season 2. Internet rumors from what I call the hot scoop circuit suggested Rory McCann had been tapped to take over the role of Baylan Skoll. Of course, Ray Stevenson tragically passed away in May 2023, leaving some questions over the character going forward. The character ended in a spot where we're like, there's more coming, but you just don't know, and that's up to the producers and the showrunner Dave Filoni, and they have recast. The Hollywood Reporter later confirmed the story, as first reported by Jeff Snyder. Rory McCann will be in Ahsoka Season 2 as Baylan Skoll. Rory McCann, some might know him as Michael from Hot Fuzz, but I have a feeling, and they should, but I have a feeling the Hound, Sandor Clegane in Game of Thrones, might be what people know him as more. So, as I'll say up top, anytime a Game of Thrones actor comes into Star Wars, I get really excited. But Joseph, your thoughts on Rory McCann taking over the role of Baylan Skoll?
I just want to start swearing about chicken. The Hound's greatest scene in Game of Thrones, in my opinion.
Yes.
I'll echo what I've seen other people say on social media, which is maybe an obvious first thing, but I am really delighted that there is no attempt to change the plot or CGI deepfake the character. Then I think that's a much larger conversation about the relationship with legacy characters versus a character who's relatively new to us, like Baylan Skoll. But in my opinion, the use of things like deepfake, that technology, and what it means not just to art but to our entire society, that's a very evolving conversation and a hot one. So you know what works? Recasting.
Yeah.
Well, we're all adults. We know it's a show, and we know it's a tragedy that Ray Stevenson passed. So I'm really glad that it's just like, yes, we're recasting and moving forward. Man, am I excited about the recast. Terrible reason for Rory McCann to make his way into Star Wars, but I love his performance in Hot Fuzz, but in particular in Game of Thrones. Like, every once in a while, there's a sort of like a beloved character that you love, but like, we love that character, but it's a pretty straightforward character. People love the Hound, and the Hound is a complex character that takes a deft touch from a great actor with layers and layers of, brute strength, anger, trauma, haunted eyes, intelligence, charm. And in some ways, one of the things that makes me most excited, I was joking about his famous chicken scene. It's terrifying and damn funny. And Rory McCann's way with humor. Now, I don't think Baylan Skoll's a laugh-a-minute character, but there's something about him that is so wry, that so has that a sadness and a twinkle and a kind of there's a kind of humor that I really associate with intelligence, of like you make these wry little jokes almost to yourself because they're your way of coping. And I'm not saying that he's going to be doing slapstick, but there's something about that really, I'm coping with sadness through humor that Rory McCann did as the Hound. That feels like Baylan Skoll to me.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. That's a great angle on the character because I'm going to do my Ahsoka rewatch and definitely focus on that because there's some little, I'll say comedic asides almost, but yeah, under the breath kind of addressing the situation where his focus is elsewhere. I love that angle of it. That's a great thought. Great thought.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question about the Hollywood Reporter. They described Baylan Skoll as a hulking former Jedi, and I think Ray Stevenson definitely has a big physical presence, and I think even in his fight with Ahsoka, there was some like stances with the lightsaber, whereas like I'm putting my back and my weight into this as well. But the story of the Hound is, and his brother, right, are these like these are born beasts who are because of their physical strength kind of used to be brutes and warriors. Do you see Baylan Skoll as a sort of a Hulk, a beast? Obviously, he's very intelligent, but do you think that is a part of the character that is there in season 1 and may even become a bigger deal with Rory McCann?
Possibly, yeah. It's not something I think I actively thought of. I think Ray Stevenson just had such a presence, right? That you could say big presence. I've talked often about one of the things I love about his performance is his energy is 2 feet in front of him the entire time, even if he's just staring up at a whale. It's there, and I think that kind of comes across of it. I'm not tall, but I have a little bit of the husky frame I inherited from my dad. So sometimes I feel like I'm hulking, not a Hulk, hulking. And maybe that's the Boris Kid description there as the fight you're talking about. But what I hadn't focused. The size was a thought in my head, just in terms of height. Rory McCann's about 6'4". I don't know how tall Ray Stevenson was, but what you're saying there makes me think of that Ahsoka fight. It does have echoes of the Hound and Brianna Tarth in their big fight at the end of, I think, was it season 4, which is one of my favorite things in the show. It's not in the book at all. Sorry, George. But it's beyond just the hulking of the size. It's the movement. It's the lumbering. It's the power that almost can't be controlled, and you can only hope to contain it. And I could see some of that. I want to refocus on the series again, like I said, and see. I think you're picking up on something beyond just that. It's an energy thing more than just a size thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to see, we'll talk more about what we hope for Baylan, but to see if that physicality becomes more a part of the character.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm excited about this. I had other thoughts. Liev Schreiber kept coming to my mind and the mind of other people, only because of his voice. I keep going to his voice. And I don't have the sizes of Hollywood actors memorized, so I don't know how big Liev Schreiber is. But he had a similar face. You grow a gray beard. I love his narration work. I've talked often about that, and I had a ForceCenter live up this morning where I talked about his work in there's a documentary following the events of 9/11 and the World Series in 2001 between the Arizona Diamondbacks, New York Yankees, and this is the George Bush throwing at the first pitch and everything. And his voice work as a narrator in that doc is made me a fan for life. It's just what he does. And so he had that sound. So I was stuck on that one. Someone brought up in chat today, this morning, Joseph Graham McTavish from the Hobbit films, who's excellent in a smaller role in House of the Dragon.
I know him from Outlander.
Outlander, yes. And yeah, at a ton of voiceover. He's an accomplished Scottish actor. But he's got the look, the beard, the size, it's everything. So there's definitely a well of choices. To land on Rory McCann was somewhat outside the box, but I was like, why? I love the guy. Why am I thinking that wouldn't have been my first choice? I'm curious to see what he does with the voice. His Hound voice is not his normal accent or voice. So it's a little different. So he has the ability to kind of, I don't want it to be a Ray Stevenson clone, but there's something about Ray Stevenson's voice, this kind of reserve, all that stuff you're talking about, where it is reserved, but the energy's in front, the brain is working, the eyes are showing another story, but he's kind of reserved. So I'm excited for Rory as an actor to go, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do my own version of this, I think. And once I kind of got over that weird little like, because it's the chicken scene. You're right. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know if I could have poor Rory McCann. Like, I don't want to see him in a role where he's not dropping f-bombs and killing people for
Mm-hmm.
chicken. But but I'm excited to see what he will do with this role. And because that's my favorite character. It's at the end of the day a wonderful choice. I'm excited for.
Yeah, he's one of my absolute favorite parts of Game of Thrones, and I think one of the things that just added real depth of like, there's plenty of storytelling in Game of Thrones of people kind of being put in a box
Mm-hmm.
by the society they're in, but he was one of the ones that made me really feel it on an emotional level. So I'm
Yes.
just also happy for the actor because yeah, I think this is going to add to his legend, and I
Yeah.
have no doubt that he can do a great job with it. But it's a character that's different enough from the Hound that I think it will really make an impression on people. That he's not
Absolutely.
just the Hound.
Yeah. Yeah. We touched upon it a little bit, but the loss of Ray Stevenson in this role is great and just tragic for him as a human and those around him that knew him and loved him. But we've kind of touched on some things we loved about the performance. I've said he's one of my favorite characters in Ahsoka. I know you love him as well. What drew you in because of Ray's take on the character?
I think there's just a sense of like a calm certainty of
Mm,
there's a couple aspects of it. Like you and I often gravitate, and I'm sure we're not alone, toward kind of no BS characters who are just like they're calm and they know what's going on and they fix it. Because I think
mm,
we all want that in life sometimes. But just when a calm character shows up, knows what's going on, takes care of business, he's got that sort of like I've thought through everything. I've thought through of every angle. I know what the situation is. I'm either in charge of the situation or I know all the ways that this situation could go sideways. And there's something that's fun to watch a character who isn't really in chaos or crisis, who's
mm,
really got their feet firmly planted.
mm.
Those characters are usually heroes.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that I like about the character is I think he is a villain right now, in my estimation, in my opinion. Uh, he is a fallen Jedi, but he's a different kind of fallen Jedi. I feel like we have seen in Star Wars various fallen Jedi who accurately point out flaws of the Jedi or mistakes that they have made, and they become disillusioned with the Jedi legitimately. And then instead of working to fix that,
Mm,
they use that as an excuse to give in to all of the anger and pain that was personally there anyway.
mm-hmm.
Dooku gives in to, he's been fighting darkness his whole life, according to the great Kevin Scott,
Mm,
audiobook slash script. And he's always had a little bit of a lust for power and always had a little bit of like, I just want to have my will be the way I want it to be. And he uses his accurate concerns about the Jedi to do that. I think the stranger in Acolyte spends a bunch of time going, good point about the Jedi. They have made mistakes. Do you want to talk anything at all about the choices you're making, or do you just want to go around feeling sorry for yourself and killing people? And
yeah.
and Anakin, Anakin is treated horribly by the Jedi in many instances,
Mm,
but it's his pain and his anger and his fear that he gives into. So it's really interesting to me, and these, of course, are all my opinions, and people can disagree. Um, Baylan so far is like the Jedi. I'm disillusioned with the Jedi. I think they've contributed to an endless cycle of war. They've broken my heart, and I'm sad about it. And I'm not giving in to any personal anger. My head is screwed on straight, and I think this all has to end. And now the reason I call him a villain is I think the little bit of his motivation that he's hinted at is I want to access some deep power on Peridia. We assume that's Mortis, or maybe the world between worlds, or something even more that we don't know, but certainly Mortis, cosmic force related. Of
mm,
there's an endless cycle of war between the Jedi and the Sith, and it just needs to be rebooted. The whole thing,
mm,
just start
mm,
over. I can't remember his actual dialogue, but that's to me what it hints towards of this sort of,
mm-hmm.
and even his actions in the show of like, it's wrong that the Jedi kill people, so I've got to kill a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
But all of it is calm. There's no sense of like my master abandoned me, or I wanted to love this person and the Jedi didn't let me. So far from what we've seen, there's nothing personal. It's just that he's really like, nah, the Jedi, the Jedi failed, and I'm really bummed about it, but I have to slowly, systematically react to that. That's what's really interesting about the character to me.
The clarity angle is a wonderful point. I think you're focusing in on one of the keys of the character that makes him really intriguing. This is not a slight against any other. From Vader, Dooku to the Stranger, they all have their own ways of approaching this. Maul comes to mind. There's a raw weapon simmering in vengeance and hate, and you kind of get the feeling that Baylan Skoll is over that, where he's like not being driven by like the silly emotions. Absolutely not. That doesn't drive me. This drives me. Whatever this is, that search for something bigger. That's why I think everyone, of all the things that's a wild show. Ahsoka goes to a lot of places, big action sequences, the fights. I think when I think of Ahsoka, I think of the scene of him just looking at the whales. I'm just like, and that is like this big, like, yeah, I'm doing what's right. Something.
Yeah.
There's something I know. I believe I think a conversation with you could push the stranger in another direction. You know?
You killed me real easy, real quick.
But I think a hug with Anakin might have solved some. You know, there's all these things, and Dooku is very right and very convinced. And obviously pulled the full Monty of going Sith. I know what it's a different thing, but you know what I mean. I don't think you could talk sense into Baylan because he's like, yeah, no, I have sense. I have all the sense. And because I don't know, he hasn't listed out his goals. They're kind of vague in this way. And I'm just saying, I can't remember the lines either. But so even the thing with Shin, you're released. It's just
because you're still playing this game of you're hurt, you're wounded, you're acting emotionally, and I mean I think he's lying to himself ultimately. I think he will. Sure. We all act emotionally.
He's bad,
and I think, but he has that clarity of like, I love that last image is him with that energy of the pointing toward where he's going because like Thrawn, Ahsoka, Anakin, Shin. Sabine, it's just all part of the system's just repeating itself and blah 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 blah. I don't care about your little chess game. Yeah. I'm looking at the big picture, and I think when something gets between him and that big picture, he's going to get more emotional. But but there's just like that laser focus of just like I know that power is there, and I can reset the board, whatever that means to him. And he's so focused on that. And you asked about Ray Stevens' performance, and I'm kind of talking a little bit about the character. But I think there's not much on paper when Ray Stevenson was given that script. And Filoni and the directors, I'm sure, also helped. But he really did the like, I'm saying very, very little in implying I'm showing you the tip of the iceberg of a thought, of a feeling with the actual scripted words. And Ray Stevenson filled in all of the stuff that you and I are talking about.
I really agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. And him, there's that kind of story that went around of Dave having to tell Ray, no, you are the bad guy, and him kind of being like, yeah, I'm not. Which is not, and that's not just the villain sees himself the hero of his own story. Yep, and that's a good tip for writing villains. But I mean, it reminds me of hearing some of the stories of Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men going like, oh, he believed every word of that speech. Like he got it, like he became Colonel Nathan Jessup. And for Ray as an actor to explore it and never just be like, oh yeah, no, I'm not the bad guy. It just those choices were present. And again, I go to it. I'll never stop going to it. Just staring into the clouds said more to me than almost anything.
We meet the character slaughtering, that entire ship of New Republic. People just doing their jobs, trying to make the galaxy a better place, right?
Yeah.
And he's so convincing and so calm and so certain that we're like, well, is he a bad guy? I mean, the first thing we did, we saw him as needlessly killing other people and kind of blaming them for it.
I'm sorry.
Saying,
you made me do this.
I'm not a Jedi. And Ray Stevenson was so good. They're all like, well, maybe Grandpa's okay. Like he started the show. The first thing he did is say, I'm not a Jedi and start slaughtering people.
His blade's not red. It's orange.
It's a reddish orange, but still. Yeah.
And I love the character of Shin too. And I the performance is great. And it's just this,
Yeah.
Sitting there with like, my teacher doesn't say much, so I'm out on the wire a lot too, trying to figure him out. I apologize for him. I don't know. It was a great energy. I love their interplay.
This is really great. Yeah, because she feels very emotional, very almost feral. Like it's a great performance too. She added a lot that's not necessarily on the page too.
Yeah, absolutely. Ivana Sock, though, of course, doing that. Yeah, so no, I agree with you on all that there. And as we look forward to it, I have to admit, I'm trying to get to the final scenes. We know the statues where we are in Peridia, not in terms of just plot or predictions, Joseph. Like hopes and thoughts for Baylan going forward, regardless of who's playing him. He's going forward, thank God. But where do you go from that staring out across the statues of Mortis?
Yeah, I think that I will need to work on practicing what we preach of accepting engaging with the story as presented.
Yeah.
But my personal hope is that Thrawn's for later. Thrawn's off there. Pick up with Ezra and Hera, and I would love to just be concentrated on what's going on in Peridia, what's going on in this new galaxy. And the reason I start there is one of my main hopes for Baylan is that he is one of the main characters in that he is the villain, the big bad of Ahsoka season 2, so that we can spend really quality time with him. I think Ray Stevenson did a fantastic job with the script, but in my opinion, I think there were a few moments that were like, hinting is good, but let us into the character. There's so much that's tantalizing about the character. We've been tantalized. I want to know more. So what I want for Baylan is I want to see his conflict. He's spoken his essay, his theme statements out loud to Ahsoka. He's made his argument, but now I want lots of pressure to come at him so his surface cracks and we see the conflict. We see, is there emotion? We see what is driving him to be certain that this is the right path. And I think just plot-wise, I think we will get to clarity of what huge, wild, strange, cosmic reset button he thinks he's going to hit, in seeing him wrestle with the morality of why is that better? Why is, instead of trying to make current galaxy a better place, instead of trying to end the cycle here and now, why is whatever big, weird cosmic plan you have, why is that better? Like, just really want to crack the surface and spend a lot of quality time with him, stop hinting, and get into the mess of who this person really is.
Love that idea. And the three people on Peridia from this story, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Baylan Skoll, all have different views on what it is to be a Jedi, or how you could be a Jedi, or even you can be a Jedi in this certain age of Star Wars, and the fact that he's kind of got this let's clear the chessboard approach. And the three of them, I'm not saying it's going to be like the movie Enemy Mine, where they're stuck together and they have to come to an agreement, but in a series that does love going back to the Jedi's past and analyzing the Order's faults and maybe the things that have been done wrong, or the members of it and their points of view on that. The three of them, I'm not saying I'm looking for a campfire scene, but three of them stuck on a planet with a big, mysterious power that just might tie into what it means to be a Jedi going forward, and what is the value in going forward at all, and who can go forward with it. Part of the Sabine journey, Ahsoka working through all the things that's going through her mind after all the trauma she's felt. Going from someone who was perhaps the greatest example of what a Jedi could be in this era, going around and finding places to help, stuck on a planet with someone like, yeah, there's something bigger out here, the big reset button. We're going to find it, and we need it. I don't know exactly where I want it to go, but I love that those three are together right now.
I'm picturing, instead of like, obviously I want and need Ahsoka and Baylan to come head to head. But I almost want Baylan to be like trapped alone, Enemy Mine style with Hu Yang, because
Yes.
Hu Yang will have known him when he was a child, know when he made his lightsaber, know why he made the lightsaber the way he did, probably know his master. Like, I think Hu Yang's uniquely positioned to poke at Baylan's truth.
That's a great and perfect that you would bring that up. This is a character you've loved for a long time, Hu Yang. He's exactly the choice to be like, might I remind you? Hey, remember when? That's great.
Yeah.
I forget that he's there too.
Remember when you were like 8 and already had a beard and made your first lightsaber.
Yes. Yeah, Baylan was one of the early bearders. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
We
so.
held that kid in like 8th grade. It was like, oh, he's already got a mustache. Um, there you go. Part of this reporting has the series beginning to film in April, I believe. I also am aware, and we are aware, that there are some other rumors of things going on in season 2. We're choosing not to address them here. They sound wonderful, sound great. They're out there. But if you want to go into Ahsoka season 2 with a clean slate, or at least wait till the news cycle really kicks up, we'll leave that aside for right now. Any final thoughts on this one, Joseph, before we move to Big Jim Mangold?
No, I'm very excited for Ahsoka season 2, and I hope it keeps rolling along and comes out as soon as possible.
Soon as possible, indeed. Hey, this kind of fell under the ForceCenter radar screen over the last week, so we're playing a little catch-up. We understand that. James Mangold offered up a little update on his film, meaning his Star Wars film. While speaking with Movie Web, director James Gold gave some small updates and insights into a Star Wars film often referred to as the Dawn of the Jedi movie. Here's the big quote. The Star Wars movie would be taking place 25,000 years before any known Star Wars movie takes place. It's an area and a playground that I've always wanted to explore and that I was inspired by as a teenager. I'm not that interested in being handcuffed by so much lore at this point that it's almost immovable, and you can't please anybody. He had previously said this in another interview, which I believe was also with MovieWeb. To me, the really important aspects are the freedom to make something new. Bo, as in Bo Williman, and I are in relation to Star Wars, have been working on a script, and we'll see what happens. Do we find a way on the page to say something original? He has more to say, but we're going to dive in right there. Joseph, thoughts on Mangold, his desire to carve a new story out of a Star Wars timeline, and I will add the subplot to this. A lot of times he's been pretty honest about the reception to Dial of Destiny, a movie you and I love, by the way, and I will not be pushed off that hill at all. But he has some. I liked his thoughts of it. I'm kind of bummed, that didn't work for some people and this and that. But one day I'll give Big Jim a hug and he'll push me away. But thoughts on Mangold and his desire to carve a story out of a new Star Wars timeline.
Yeah, I think one thing I just want to say at the top, just about kind of the business of it, is I think it's important that he's out here saying these quotes of, we're working on it. Do we find a way on the page to say something original? I love that, Kathleen Kennedy herself announced these 3 films: Dawn of the Jedi, the Filoni New Republic versus Thrawn film, and the New Jedi Order, with the directors right there. And I really hope this film happens. But I think what he's also trying to say is, yeah, I know I announced it, but we haven't even finished the script yet. And I'm not even sure if I feel like I'm not moving forward until I feel like we said something new on the page, is a way to say, like, yeah, I know Lucasfilm announced this one, but it's in development like the others, So
I think that's a great point. Absolutely great point.
In terms of what he has to say about finding, carving out a story in a new timeline, I think that's great. I really have been wanting to talk about it in terms of variety. We talk about the Star Wars buffet and wanting lots of different kinds of storytelling, and sometimes we talk about that in terms of genre or style or media that they're released in. But for me, it's also one of those bits of variety I want is lore versus wide open fields. And I don't need Star Wars to be one or the other. I don't need it to be. It should always be really interconnected. It should always rhyme, like George started. Or it's all so tired and I never want to hear a Skywalker name again, and it should all be new. I'm not in. I want both.
Yes,
and I think we might be on the precipice of a really good time of, hey, if you really are hungry for something new, Filoni and Favreau might not be for you in terms of not being connected to lore. Because I think Filoni and Favreau both like being connected to the lore. They like playing in the existing sandbox and saying, okay, but this character in this event happened. How did this new character make up? How would they react to it? What's a part of this character's story that you never knew? Or how could they go in a different direction? And they enjoy that. And I think that storytelling is really, really good. But I also want the variety of it. I'm excited to sit down and watch Mandalorian and Grogu in the theater and have 800 characters I've seen before pop up. Great. But then I also want things like the experience that we're getting with Skeleton Crew. That feel like part of this is like, wow, there is absolutely lore to this show. but it's mostly tied to the Old Republic and pirates, and you're making up this whole new lore that we're having so much fun exploring of At-Atten and the jewels of the Old Republic. And I think Mangold wanting to have even more of a Skeleton Crew-like experience of it is wide open is great. I appreciate his honesty, and I also feel like, hey, if some of your biggest films were about Wolverine, Indiana Jones, and Bob Dylan, the man is due for some freedom of not being constrained to what is already known, felt, believed about these characters / Bob Dylan.
And Johnny Cash, too. I've forgotten
Johnny
that,
Cash,
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know this is mostly him kind of probably talking to the Indiana Jones world of it all, and just the Star Wars of it all. I think he's being very direct about the Star Wars of it all. But yeah, I was reading this article. It's like, oh yeah, walk the line. Yeah, I love that. Love what you're saying. You talk about Skeleton Crew. Actually, I'll start here. Shimmer is both a floor wax and a dessert topping, to make a 50-year-old Saturday Night Live reference. I understand those in my circle, and it's sometimes in the close circle of like, I just don't want Star Wars to be connected to Star Wars. And then I understand those who are like, nah, like that's Star Wars. I'm sometimes firmly planted in both. I do love that Andor is so connected, but also is running its own story at times that works for me. I love that Luke shows up in Mando Season 2. I love the characters that show up in Bad Batch that I don't think are cameos. I think they're very purposeful in their use in that series. But also it's Star Wars. I've said before, I don't want the Skywalker saga to end. No. I say this cynically, like sometimes I have, just Game of Thrones has to be about the Starks and the Lannisters. I don't want it to be about, Godfather 4 to be about the chef. Like, that's not why we're here. Like, this is Star Wars. This is Game of Thrones. This is why it works. But Skeleton Crew has not changed that for me, but it being very much its own thing. And I know it was pitched as a movie. We've heard that. We've also heard, it was originally pitched as maybe like an Old Republic or not High Republic, but another era. Now it's in this Mandoverse era. I don't really care about that right now, how we got to where we are. And it's in the timeline that we're all so familiar with that has still a lot of room to explore. But it is doing its own thing. It is bringing in all new characters. If there's there's some great ideas of who might show up. Does Din show up to get a bounty on Jah? Does Leia? You and I joked about Leia Mothma show up and go, we would like this money. It could work. I don't feel as though the show is saying that, and it's been fun, and there's a great amount of freedom in it. So I really think he's right about this. But I am more excited than even I was in London. And we always play the what are you most excited for game. I'm excited for the Rey movie first. Excited for this one. I'm curious about the Filoni movie because we got a lot of storytelling to get there. And then I'm super excited about Mandalorian and Grogu because you know what? Let's just tee it high and let it fly. Let's just fun with that movie. But James Mangold, I think, is going to bring something. I think he's going to bring some poignancy to it. I think he's going to bring some very clear themes, and I think he's going to have some an intensity to it, a seriousness of mind sometimes. Thinking about all his movies, I don't remember if he's done a ton of comedies. Dial of Destiny might be his most funny film. I don't know. Girl Interrupted, the remake of 3:10 to Yuma, which I absolutely love. Which is a great talk about that. That might be a ForceCenter Other Center presents 3:10 to Yuma theme exposition theme expose. Anyways, all that to say, sorry, I'm digressing. I really love that he as a creator might feel handcuffed by that stuff, so he doesn't have to worry about it. This is a perfect spot for him, and I'm more excited for the film.
Yeah, and I think, getting to meet new characters has been some of the strongest moments in the Disney era of Star Wars, the excitement that a lot of people felt for the new characters in Force Awakens. The first season of Mandalorian, where we're really meeting Din and Grogu as new characters. Rogue One, Bad Batch, Skeleton Crew. I think Jordan Jecki and the Acolyte people seemed particularly excited to the point of giving them names. So meeting all these new characters is great. I want to ask you about this. I love everything that Mangold is saying about unconnected. But at the same time, obviously it's going to be unconnected to known characters. Han Solo isn't going to be, whoops, I fell through the world between worlds and now I'm in this movie. But this is also, in terms of what we know about it, it's not just in the Old Republic. That would be one thing. It's the dawn of the
Dawn.
Jedi. So there is a lot of, I would say, lore attached to how did the Jedi start? What is the first lightsaber? It's
Yeah.
interesting to hear him talk like this when it's like, this film actually feels pretty lore intensive in that you are setting lore that many other people have imagined, headcanon, fan fiction. So it doesn't actually feel as free as I love what Big Jim is saying, but I'm like, oh no, Big Jim.
Oh no.
People probably have some pretty strong opinions about what the first lightsaber might have looked like.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought that up. I think even in prepping this conversation or this news story for us to talk about, I hadn't taken that into effect because I think you're really right. Which goes to when I say, I got the marketing, but the Skywalker saga is not going to end because you're still going to have the shadow of the Skywalker family over it, and that's outside of Rey Skywalker continuing as a family member. But I'm just like, the history books have some Skywalkers who've done some things. You still might have to deal with that. You're absolutely right. No one tell Big Jim this. Because it's part of my argument sometimes when I'm like, why do you need something completely new? I'll use the Game of Thrones example just to kind of go to neutral ground. Like, yes, I'd love to learn about the islands of ET and everything, but it's still going to have to not connect, but it's still things factor in. Did the Night Kings reach 10,000 years go to that far? Like, it's still there. If you're in Essos, it's still there. The Seven Kingdoms, the reach is far and wide. So you're talking about him. He's almost got it worse in a way. Again, that's what I'm not going to tell him. Establishing lore. I dare say he has not read the EU legend stories of power pack lightsabers in the early on. I don't even know if a lot of people ask about what about the Prime Jedi featured in Last Jedi. Like I'm at this point like that to me is just going to be a general symbol or legend that I don't think this isn't going to be the story of hi I'm Jedi Prime.
Yeah, but it is already like does it have to take place on Octo?
Right.
Or do there need to be giant dinosaur version of porgs before they evolved into birds? There need to be dinosaur porgs, or I'm walking out of this film, Big Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like dinosaur porgs. Let's not lie. But yeah.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is why I have a little bit of a soft brace for impact. To myself.
It was the film. I love James Mangold. I have not seen every one of his films. I really love Dial of Destiny. I think it's a fantastic film. I understand it might not be to everyone's taste, but I would really defend the quality of the script and the filmmaking. I think it did exactly what it set out to do, and I understand that there's a lot of people who are like, I went to Indiana Jones for fun, not to wrestle with. Yeah. Hey, when you're really old, you still have a place in the world. It's not necessarily a fun adventure theme. I get it, but that theme was there. It's so supported. So I love Mangold. I love Logan. But I am a little concerned about people being attached to either I don't want the answer to where the Jedi came from. I don't want this to be a list of explanations. And I'm too attached to my own headcanon of what it might have been. Or maybe I never even imagined where the Jedi came from, but it's not that. Maybe I have, still wounds from the generation growing up, the original trilogy, and then the prequel era answering too much about where the Jedi came from, where 3PO came from, where Vader came from, and a little bit of that attitude of like, it's fun and mystical. We want it to be from the misty past. We don't want it to be so real.
It's a great point. And I mean, I sat in a theater rolling my eyes in 1999 that I no longer roll my eyes at anymore. But there's some of that of what you're saying of just like, I didn't think about it, but that's not the answer, which is so tough. It's that thing too of like, what is Star Wars? That is such a wide open, subjective question.
Yeah.
Jim had some bigger comments about making films, especially those under the, quote, franchise label. Success is never guaranteed, but the reality is that the way to get most people to agree is to move them, to somehow find the humanity in a situation. Whether it's a mega franchise or a smaller dramatic movie, whatever they are, usually the movies you remember are the ones that move you, the ones that leave you cold, even if they're clever, even if they're spectacular, even if they're dazzling. Somehow just become replaced by the next dazzling object a year later. It's the feelings, it's the feels, right? That truly defines how we feel about these movies and whether we care to visit them again. I wanted to ask about what we take from that, how it applies to a new Star Wars film, any new Star Wars film, and the one Mangold is making. I will say up top, like, I love what he's saying here, and it's still subjective because you and I definitely, and others, shout out to my buddy BJ Campbell, had feels coming out of Dial of Destiny. Other people felt cold. And I think, what can you do at that point? But him talking about the humanity in the situation, I think that's why Logan worked and was, for me, at the time, one of the only superhero films I really, really loved, and I'd still put it in that category. But other films have done a good job. Guardians of the Galaxy made people feel. Black Widow made me. I love Black Widow. I think it's one of my favorite Marvel movies. Made me feel. So again, that's subjective. But pitching it to you, and hey, as someone who's editing your script and trying to make people feel for a movie, what do you think about this and how it applies to Star Wars?
I'll try to contain myself because I've literally been walking around my apartment, my neighborhood, saying the word emotion out loud sometimes without even realizing it because it's what I'm thinking about so much.
There goes old man Scrimshaw. He just yells emotion all day in his bathrobe.
Emotion. But it is the filming process. There's so much to keep track of that is practical and logistic, and it all adds to the overall quality. But I think one of the director's biggest jobs is to just go, everybody else is taking care of the lighting, the costume, the makeup, all that. My job is the emotion. What is this scene about? Why would an audience care? Emotion. In my soapbox is that is you're saying emotion is subjective, and you can make the most emotional film ever and it will resonate with people who are on that wavelength and feel that emotion, and maybe it doesn't work for other people. But I think what is the danger that he's talking about with some of the stories that we already have a relationship with is I think we as audience members get a better experience when we lead with emotion, when we're like, I want that character to get what they want, or that character is being wronged by someone else and I want it right, and that is what you're feeling and thinking about. You're leading with emotion. As soon as we start leading with logic, then it becomes that sort of you're dinging them for that cut didn't work. That person was leaning this shot and they weren't leaning the other. They forgot this bit of lore. And like, if you're watching with logic only or logic first, I think the viewer is losing out themselves. And I think that we're in danger with some of our storytelling of being too logic first, and we should always be emotion first. And I think maybe this is what Big Jim is saying. I think that is tied to some of the dangers of lore. I have talked to at least 3 other people who said, I don't like Kenobi or Boba Fett because Kenobi was supposed to stay on Tatooine and Boba Fett was supposed to leave. That's not emotion. You're watching the show with logic. And if that's been your headcanon for 1,000 years and that's your opinion, I got no problem with that. And I understand you shutting off the show and going, not for me. But if you can't get past that logic version of watching something, you're not going to even have a chance to see do the emotions work for you. If you can set aside the logic of, I don't think Kenobi should have ever left. I don't think that he should have ever encountered Vader, and hook into, oh my God, he failed Anakin. He failed all the children. He failed the Jedi. Now he's being asked to save another child. That's the emotion. And if you can't get hooked into that, you're not going to enjoy it. And I think that's so much of what's going on in our modern storytelling landscape, both for audiences and for artists, is it sings when it's emotion first.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about the logic of. We're talking about the logic in a fun way. We're talking about the mystery of the skeleton crew in At-Atten. We're talking about the feeling of who do we want Jod to be? Is he going to let us down? Is Neil going to get to take a bath? You know, we're
Yeah.
leading with emotion, and I think that's why so much of the community is enjoying it, because it's emotion first.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there's some wild theories. We were hearing some the other day, and shout out to our time on the Resistance broadcast with John and Lacey. A lot of fun. And we even get some in our community that are fun, wild. What if Jod was this? What if was that? And to me, it's all icing on the cake. But look, I want to acknowledge too, like it's not always easy to lead with emotion, and I think that's part of acknowledging that you need to is going, hey, this one didn't work for me. I've talked about Ahsoka not connecting with me as much as other people, and it gets me a little grumpy, and maybe I've gone too far, and I apologize sometimes, but I have to remind myself, you talk about is taking our own medicine, speculating responsibly, and all these things that we've talked about over the years. I lost my way a little bit with that series because I did feel cold, unless it was Ray Stevenson as Baylan, then I was supposed to feel cold. So it's not always easy, and that's what James Mangold is up against, and why it's daunting for any project, especially Star Wars. That what you're talking about too. I had that specifically the same conversation with someone. I didn't like Kenobi. Oh, too bad. I liked it. Yeah, he wasn't supposed to leave. Okay, but what if he did? What if he did? Go with me here. What if he did? And the series is not about him leaving. It's about all these other things. But that goes down another avenue. I don't know. So I feel him on this. It's daunting. It's overwhelming. All of us, whether you're writing a joke, a song, movie script, you're putting your feelings into it, and you can only just hope people connect with it.
Yeah. And I think, we're talking about Ahsoka season 1, I feel like I struggled with parts of it. There are parts of it I liked more than others, and I think I generally liked it more than you and Jennifer did. I hooked in with the emotion, but sometimes I wanted more, and that's what was frustrating to me. Of like, I sense what's burbling in these characters. Like, I want it to boil over. It was like there was a lot of times for me where it felt like I really like the emotion that's bubbling, but it's not quite coming to a full boil the way I want it to. But I also wanted to say quickly about Ahsoka season 1, as we talk about all these issues of lore. I think Ahsoka season 1 is one of the most dense in terms of lore shows. Make the joke that what if things came with a canon rating, and I think Ahsoka would be NC-17 in my opinion. And yet, some of the most fresh, new, we can do anything. Hey, there's a brand new galaxy. Right. Why not? Go for it. And, new ideas left and right in Ahsoka. So I also don't want it to be that, like, just because it's dense lore, just because it's deeply interconnected, doesn't mean that there can't also be wild new ideas. Ahsoka is some of the biggest swings.
I agree with that.
And if you had asked, if you'd taken a poll of fans, do you want there to be more than one galaxy far, far away? A bunch of people would say no. And then here we are. And it's wide open and brand new and interesting. And things don't need to be just lore or just new. Ahsoka is really both.
I do want to give it a lot of credit for that, and admitting to the point of like even jumping over to the new galaxy. I was like scared as a fan, and I know some of the even canon Thrawn storytelling takes us to other parts of the galaxy, the Chiss Ascendancy and whatnot, and I don't gravitate towards that. I have this weird like no, we can't leave. No, don't leave this galaxy. It's big enough. We can explore it. And then we went there, and I was like, I love that, and the fact that one of the first things we really see and spend time with is the Noti, these little turtle folk that I love so much. I'm a big fan of them. It's a wild step forward, and I want to give Dave and the Ahsoka team all the credit for that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what other big new swings might come there.
Final thought here, if a Dawn of the Jedi film hits theaters, and we're only saying that to Joseph's earlier point about not even just reading the tea leaves and anything James Mangold's saying, but just the reality of the situation. Hey, a little bit of Lucasfilm track record. I think it's fair to bring that in, but it's still a long way off. But so big if If a Dawn of the Jedi film hits theaters, what would we hope to feel from it, Joseph? What would we hope to feel at the dawn of this Jedi Order that has so much to do with the galaxy we love?
To me, I want to feel, I want to fall in love with characters.
Yeah.
I think if we are falling in love with characters, then it becomes less of a story about answers, less of a, documentary in Star Wars of, so how did the Jedi begin? How did they find the Force? Who thought of building the first lightsaber? Did it have a power pack? Those things will come, but they all have to come through the wants and the needs of characters, which obviously is storytelling 101, and Big Jim's going to do just fine. But what I think what I want to feel is inspiration. The Dawn of the Jedi movie, to me, could really be about a feeling of, we talk about justice for the Jedi, that their core principles, their core ideas is great. And we end up telling stories where they fall from their high ideals. But in theory, this would be a story about a group of people deciding to hold themselves to these ideas. Like, maybe this film's just going to be about this discovery of the Force. And he's talked about that before, of you feel connected to this thing. And then the idea that you can manipulate it, even if it doesn't get to the, like, we bang the gavel and the Prime Jedi says the first meeting of the Jedi it's called together. If it's just somebody who's like, I feel connected to this thing, and I'm starting to realize that through my connection, I have literal and metaphorical power.
Mm-hmm.
To me, a version of that story is, well, I have this power. I can do things. Someone in the galaxy near me or someone I care about is suffering. The powers that be think that's fine. But I have this power. Do I choose to use it? And I think sometimes it's almost an uncomfortable thing to talk about, because there starts to be really real world implications. But I think that is the story of the Jedi, of like, yeah, we don't answer necessarily to a government. There isn't Overwatch. It's, we have power. We think we are morally correct that it should be used to help and defend people who need and want our help. And so we're going to use our power because it's the right thing to do, because it's wrong to have this power and not help people when they're in need. If it's a character that we fell in love with and we're spending half the movie watching someone suffer, and you're like, for bleep's sake, use your power, and the character chooses to use their power, it'd be really complex, really interesting, and really, really inspiring.
I really agree. I'm right there with you on the big reasons, the why, and the why of why would you use the Force in this way. And I agree with you. I think it's a good thing to point out now. Even I might have to temper not even expectations, but thoughts on, should we all wear robes? Let's vote. Yeah. Majority says. That's been no indication that that's it. But getting to the core of why, I do. We haven't talked as much. We did talk about maybe when the news broke, but Bo Willimon, I'm not super familiar with House of Cards, but I do love his work at Andor, and I do love the way they approached a lot of things in Andor, and big themes that were kind of direct, smaller, and intimate in a way against the backdrop of the rebellion and the coming rebellion and the oppression. So going to the beginning, going to the discovery of this Force, which leads to abilities and what might lead to a commitment, not necessarily just a commitment to a serious mind, as Yoda might say later, but or does say later, but the idea to commit to something bigger and beyond yourself, that's going to be an important theme. And we as human beings in a world that's constantly struggling around us, it's constantly being torn apart around us, committing to something outside of yourself, committing to, in this myth, this is a myth of light and dark, and you're right. Real world stuff comes rushing in fast, and real world stuff becomes more present as the story goes on and the times around us get a little more wacky and crazy and troubling. I think it's good to have the real life conversations, but just to go to the core of it, of this, I want to be on board with the idea of, yes, committing to the light in this sense, in the Star Wars sense, in this morality sense, is the right choice. And I think that's going to be the big feeling I'm going to want from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I want feeling more than I need answers from Dawn of the Jedi.
That is it. That's our hope. There you go. We've talked about Star Wars news, at least the news that is available to us at the time of this recording. As always, stand by. Force Center might bring the heralding of new Star Wars information. So we'll update as needed. That is it. Final thoughts here. Anything you want to say before we slide on out of here, my friend?
No, this is really, really fun stuff to talk about. I'm really excited for where Ahsoka can go. And man, I really, really like Jim Mangold's work that I've seen. So I'm excited for Dawn of Jedi.
I do. I love calling him Big Jim Mangold because no one else has actually called him that, but it just seems apropos. If you're an old-time Hollywooder. All right, let's get on out of here. You can find us on social media at Force Center Pod, especially on Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook pages, Force Center Podcast. If you're watching here on YouTube, like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell your friends about us, do all those wonderful things. We're available as a podcast at a lot of different spots. Just search, you'll find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. Thank you. All of you. Thank you to all of you who support us there. You can get into our Discord from there as well. You can follow me at Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com, for more information on all the other things and shows I do. You, sir, where can they follow you and your work, including the work on your film, Dead Media?
That is right. You can go to my website, josephscrimshaw.com, and check out information on the film I'm working on. We filmed it, and I'm editing away. The film is called Dead Media. It's a horror film that hopefully leads with emotion, but hopefully also makes logical sense. Anyway, if you want to support us, there's a link to a place where you can give a one-time tax-deductible donation to the film as I work on building the post-production budget. You can also find me in particular on Blue Sky. I'm back on Mastodon as well, so come find me at those places.
Forgot about Mastodon. I'm going to re-up. I'm still signing my MySpace page about once a year, so maybe I'll head back there with our pal Bonnie Burton, who's over there as well. All right, that is it. We'll see you next time. So for Big Jim Mangold and all the feelings, we'll see you here on Force.